We did it.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, welcome. As people probably figured out, I am not Wes Spencer. Although, funny enough, I have that shirt in my suitcase. I wish I should have put that on instead.
yeah,
Uh,
mine's at home.
this is Kyle Spooner. Kyle Spooner had a tragedy recently. He is relatively in the path of Helene and hasn't had internet for 7 days, so he drove to a Barnes & Noble's parking lot to join us today. So how you doing, Kyle?
Yep. I'm great. I mean, I got coffee because there's a Starbucks in there as well. So, I mean, I'm alive. I've got power at the house, so I can at least start having food again. That's nice.
That is nice. So we're here today to talk about education, and we're going to do this pretty free flowing. I think that you're supposed to moderate this fireside chat. I think that's what you probably got drafted into, right?
I don't know. Maybe. Uh,
Okay.
we'll wing it. It's fine. It's not like it won't be the first time we've winged something. So,
Yeah. So the chat that was on right before this, they were talking about community, right? And I actually think that the community discussion is a great segue into education, right? Because to me, the two are invariably linked, right? Like a lot of the education that I get and give, I think both Matt Lee and I, we do our mission and we spread the good we're attempting to spread via community, right? Like doing things like this. Like I got asked at literally 11 a.m. this morning, hey, can you step in and sub in for Wes Spencer because he's got to leave for Hurricane? And the immediate answer was, do I have to do slides? The secondary answer was, okay, if I don't have to do slides, then the answer is yes.
it's
Matt
basically
Lee,
mine answer too.
yeah, right. Matt Lee and I are we're speaking Thursday at Wild West Hacking Fest, and those slides aren't done yet. So I'll be damned if I'm going to create slides for a talk today when my slides for my giant talk Thursday are not yet done. So here we are. So
Uh,
why are we doing this, right? Like aren't we all smart? I mean, most MSPs are in theory smart people.
Generally speaking, I would say so. Not always common sense smart. There's different types of smart, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's my experience too, right? I have, God, we're up to 29 employees, 29 and a half employees now, right? And our technical team
Wow.
is getting increasingly large. And as we hire, we are typically hiring, and I don't know about you, you've now moved over to the dark side, the vendor
We're
side of
looking for the
this.
cookies.
Oh, there were cookies in that office in Austin. Have you not been there?
Not yet,
Oh, okay. They definitely have cookies. Uh, but we hired tier one, tier two people, right? And we turned them into tier three people. Typically these days, we're mostly hiring tier one people because if you hire all your higher level techs, you don't, it's really hard to provide a career path for the lower level techs you hire. Right. So our mantra for as long as I've been doing this has typically been to hire more entry level people and build them into what you need. And that requires education. It requires a plan to put them on a career path. It requires time for them to do those things associated with it. And eventually, we have seen over and over again that they move up in their career, they get better. Sometimes they leave us. Sometimes they get to the end of that journey that you can provide them and they go find something else to do. Pace of play in the MSP world is definitely a little stressful. Like I think you typically run at near burnout level pretty much all of the time. Raise your hand in the chat if you're not running at near burnout level.
though. I mean, I'd agree with you. Like it's you will find really strong, really high level technicians in the wild, but they're going to be few and far between, and they may not be a fit in a number of ways, culturally or just in the skill set you need. So,
Yeah.
building someone up is generally the easier path to take. At least that's the path you plan for. Even if you get a much nicer, if you find someone in the wild who happens to
Yeah.
fit more than what you need at the moment.
And the other downside of that is if I'm hiring somebody that came from another MSP, I have to unlearn all their bad behaviors. Because like
Potentially, absolutely.
yeah, mean, I've done it over and over again where we'll hire somebody where, their time entry procedure is different than ours is. Like, we're pretty much time entry, and the techs are expected to be like on the ticket they're working, in progress, a bunch of other stuff that goes with it. And while I can hire very technical resources with experience, they then become the biggest pain in the butts as far as adherence to actual policies and things that actually, do the business side of the business and make us money. So I have found that we usually have a much better time hiring new people and trying to make them better. So how do we do it? Come on, just tell me, then we can end.
Okay. There's several ways. You can, put out job postings on all the numerous websites that exist. I like to utilize the internal resources to find people. Those are generally much better quality than hiring someone off the street. I also like to go and visit colleges and similar locations, technical schools, and outreach to them and set up internships and things like that, and evaluate staff that way. Because college kids there's tons of them. There's so many going into technical schools and technical fields that will be happy to work an internship or a temporary job doing help desk work, even project work if there's someone that's skilled enough. And it's not utilizing resources like that is just harming yourself as a business.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, we have one. I have a student. He's a second year as a sophomore in college, and he just started about 5 weeks ago at a help desk level 1 role, and I mean, it's going well so far. And we have a very defined process around how to hire and train and onboard those people and the education expectations around it. We haven't yet started doing internships. We've done them in the past, but it's been a giant pain in the butt. But we're just now getting the processes in place to be able to actually do that at scale. So let's dive into what some of those processes look like, right? So when it comes to educating and training up your employees, where do you start, right? Like, where do you start? Because you ran, the technical team of a relatively large MSP ish.
So I tend to start with areas that I'm hurting in, either
Yep.
in skill sets or where there's a bottleneck. Right? If we have a lot of networking issues coming up and not all, and the team is not network strong, then I might look for someone that has network skills, or maybe even internally, as I'm building that up, seeing someone who might be interested in learning about networking,
Yep.
and fostering that. So understanding where I'm lacking in talent and lacking in throughput is where I start, because you got to start somewhere, right? You can't just assume that you need project engineers if you don't actually understand what the problem is. So identifying what the problems are and then working your way to what the solution would be as far as talent goes is generally how I started. What about you?
Same thing, right? I think that I created our little like cheat sheet of what the bullet points we are kind of gonna talk to here, and you nailed it, right? Like, it's really hard to educate and to bring somebody along if you can't define the end state, right? So you need to know what skill sets do I have gaps in? What skill sets are we looking to fill, right? Like, where are my employees right now skill set wise, right? Like, we're big enough now, with 15, 17 technical resources, I think we have now, maybe 19. It's a non-zero number that we have started developing a skills matrix for them. Right. So basically, we've taken all of the common things that we do, because we do a lot of project work, a lot of higher end project work. So we've started taking those skills that those resources have and basically grading them on a scale of 1 to 5. Right. And what happens when you do that is like right now, for instance, we're doing quite a bit of work with XCP&G, and I don't have very many resources that have 4s and 5s on the XCP&G side. As a matter of fact, I have exactly one, and it's Tom. Right. I have 1 5. I'd call myself a 3 or 4, and then I have some 2s and 3s. Right. So now, once you put that roadmap together and that skills matrix together for the skills you have, then you can take a look at a subset of tickets or projects that come in and look at the skills that they require. right? And once you do those two things, then it should be very apparent, like, okay, well, I don't have enough resources with this skill bucket to do that. And then you can put together a plan to get those resources, that skill. Sometimes you need to hire, as you pointed out. Sometimes you can build. Right now, internally, I am running a networking course. I have every other week for an hour. Anyone in my company can come participate in it. We just got finished doing the beginnings of layer 3, right? So we went through the entire history of networking. I showed them what ThickNet looked like because I actually have some at home. 10base5. We talked about Ethernet on the wire. We talked about ARP and the way we get from layer 2 to layer 3, and now we just started subnetting, right? And I have identified that a base level networking knowledge is required for all levels of the MSP. So basically, I open it up to all employees that, hey, Jason's going to teach a class internally on how to do networking and how to do it, and it gives us the ability to customize it to what we're running internally. But now I can level up the entire company. But on some of these things like XCP-ng, it's like we've identified 2 or 3 resources, and Tom is working with them, and I'm working with them to try to increase their skill set there. But the biggest thing there, you have to make a plan.
So that's one of the things I was building before I went to the dark side, was a career development plan. I built out. It was at 99 pages when I was done, unfinished, at 99 pages, and it had the job title, the basic overview of the skill sets required, some skill challenges, and different roles that position generally migrates to. And then that would actually link to an appendix where it would list out the skills you need to prove to be able to demonstrate that you can move into that new position. And but I consider that the baseline. Like you have to understanding where the problems are is great. Fixing those is great, but you still need to have a generalized, this is what I expect from the role. This is what I expect from this title. And because how many times have you gotten the question, hey, I'm a tier 2 technician. I want to be promoted to tier 2. And you're like, well, you barely know how to reset a password. And then you have to figure out how to work with them to get them to that next level. And then you start building out what it looks like. And some of that is on them, some of that is on you, some of that is on the business. You have to figure out where those lines are drawn and build out a plan and the next steps to be able to do that. And if that's publicly available, people will naturally start leaning towards things and start learning stuff on their own. Just like with, you're doing network training, right? I hate networking. It is like it's an Achilles heel of mine, even though I am Network Plus certified circa 2013. Prior to IPv6 being one of the big things. And it's just like, even I know the basics of stuff like that. So you want to have a baseline of what's expected and where I can go as an employee. Because I will absolutely, on my own, if I'm sitting at home and I have nothing to do, start poking at potential roles I might be interested in on my own without having the company to do anything. And I think that's super important.
That's actually really important. And I go back and forth on that, right? Like, on one hand, I very much believe in work-life balance, and asking people to take a ton of their time after hours to do that work is hard. But at the same time, I find that the most successful employees we have are self-motivated, and they do want to learn, and they are willing to put the time in. So we don't require it, but we will enable them to more effectively spend that time outside of the office, right? Like if I can buy you a class, or I can buy you something, or I can get you some lab equipment that you can play with, I'm more than willing to do that, and very, very happy to support users that are willing to push their own cart forward with regards to learning.
It needs to be a balance between the business enabling and allowing training and a lab and stuff like that, and the personal time and personal development and learning on your own, because like let's be real, right? These are businesses operating. MSPs run a business. Their job is to close tickets and help make sure their clients stay up and running as best as possible. There's not going to be a lot of time with the way MSPs function to be able to do learning and training. So the business has to either carve it out, or have some type of enablement for the employees to grow and learn, because people are people, right? Not everyone's going to be in the same mindset of, I'm going to just put my nose to the grindstone and learn all about networking in the next 2 weeks, right? That may be a 4 month long process because of just personal time and personal things that are going on. And you as a business can't, or as a leader, as a manager in the company, can't put all the onus on the individual to grow and learn.
Yeah. Yeah,
You have to have some accountability.
you can't. I mean, because we also have employees that basically got into the field because they heard an ad on the radio that they can make $80,000 a year if they go get their CCNA, which is not usually true. But they believe that they've put the work in, and now that they're owed what they have, and they shouldn't have to learn anything else.
So this is an interesting debate because I go back and forth on this. Do you think certifications are worth it?
This is the next topic on our list. You took us there. I don't know. So interestingly enough, I just watched a video, Linus Sebastian, right? Like Linus Tech Tips, Linus. He just went and took the A+. He's never had it. He just went, blindly took it. He did pass, right? But the entire discussion was about whether or not certifications are worth it. We require certifications as part of our career pathing, right? Like, so to move from a level 1 to level 2 or tier 1 to tier 2, we require you to get a couple of certification tests, but we also will tell you what certifications we want you to get, right? Like, and honestly, we align the certifications we ask our employees to obtain with the certifications our vendors require us to hold to move up in their partnership program. That's
a business choice. That's not a need necessarily. I, Matt brought up a good question. Do certs help? And so I'm gonna make a blanket statement.
Mhm.
Certifications, uh, depending on your expectation of the information provided, uh, are beneficial and they do help. If you expect to get a certification and then you are now a master, then you are completely in the wrong. And that you're basically, a certification just demonstrates you have the capability to answer questions on a test. It doesn't necessarily mean you can easily demonstrate the knowledge of how and why you do something a specific way.
Yep.
And a lot of the certifications, like with Microsoft, are this is how Microsoft expects you to do this specific thing. And
Yes.
sometimes it can be a bit wrong. And sometimes that changes from year to year.
Yeah. Oh,
So
100%. I mean, from my perspective, so you heard how I value certifications in the beginning of this, right? I tell employees to get certifications that help us from a moving on standpoint. There's a couple of spots where I think that they are useful. If you're looking for a new job, they can be useful. The problem is somebody like me, who's been doing this since like dinosaurs roamed the earth. There is an increasing amount of gray in this beard. Understands that, as you were calling out, obtaining a certification does not mean you understand the material. It just means you can pass the test, right? And those two things are very disconnected with one another, especially in this modern day and age and brain dumps. Like, if you have any, like, I'm a ham radio operator, I memorize a question pool. Like, there's 120 possible questions. They give you a random 40 of them. I memorized all 120 in the correct answers. And guess what? I got 100%, right? Like, super easy to do. But does that mean that I understand all the antenna theory and shit that like a ham radio operator does? I know most of it, but I don't know it as well as somebody that had the knowledge and then went and took the test. We see that all the
so
time.
I equate it to like pilot's license, right? right? To be able to take a pilot license test, you have to have what, 40, 50, 60 hours, depending on
Yeah.
location of actual experience of flying.
Yep.
With a trained expert and a trained pilot with you doing it. And then you can take the test, which you can still fail. Um, versus like the SATs, right? You study
Mhm.
books, you study knowledge, you take the PSATs, and then you take the test, and then that's it. Um, those still give you like a grade at the end, but are done a whole completely different methodologies of understanding. And with IT, it should be more towards the pilot license
Yeah.
type, because of how nuanced so many things can be, uh, versus just this is how you open the registry editor. This
Yeah.
is where some things are stored. Like that's just not
Yeah.
where it's.
There are two classes of certifications that are common in our industry. The first is the like just blanket test engine, multiple choice or short answer, or whatever the 6 or 8 question types you tend to get, that you can go through and you can study an exam guide and pass that, right? Like I have passed the VCP tests, the VMware Certified Professional tests. I have passed the DCV one 3 or 4 times. I've passed the network virtualization one once, right? And in that test, honestly, it's about whether or not you memorize all the stupid little, like, how many floppy drives can you attach to a VM? Who cares? Right? Like, honestly, who cares? But there's a question on it, so I guess I care. Does that actually move me meaningfully forward in my career? How? Hell no, it does not. Like, that is, it just, it basically, it's a gate that you sat down and you read through the documentation and you learned a lot of those weird configuration maximums. The other type of certification and test that exists in our world is the Practium, I'm going to call it. Like, it's basically a hands-on test where you do things. The RHCE, Red Hat Certified Expert, as well as the CCIE, and several of the certifications that Matt holds, like the PNCP, are like that, right? So instead of having a multiple choice, you get a blank system in a set of tasks, and you have to complete that set of tasks. I find the latter to be infinitely more useful because it demonstrates that you have actual knowledge of it. It demonstrates that you can apply the knowledge and haven't just memorized it. Because the former has it skews in both directions. I have really good practitioners in the room next to me. Like, they're all out there. I have really good practitioners that suck at taking tests, and they take them over and over and over again, and they never pass. They just suck at taking tests. They're the smartest people I have, but they suck at taking tests. The flip side of that is I have people, and I don't know that we have any of them left, but we have had people in the past that have been not great employees, but they can pass any certification test you gave them. Right? They're great test takers. I'm a great test taker. I've had a stack of certifications in my career. I let most have expired. I'm a dual VCP, RHCE, CCNP, CCDP. Right? Like, I've had a crap ton of certifications because I'm a good test taker, right? So it's easy for me to apply the knowledge, do a little bit of studying, and go pass a test. But I don't think the multiple choice tests do a good job at all of actually certifying whether or not you actually have a skill.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, when I took my Network Plus certification, that was actually my job interview, quote unquote, to be able to get an interview at the MSP. My first MSP, first IT job, really, was, hey, go get a certification to prove that you're capable. So I bought a Network Plus certified book and read it in a week, took the test, passed it, and then I will absolutely unequivocally say I still don't quite understand what the slash like 32 and 24 really means. Like I have a like I know it's to segment the IP addresses and the amount you can have, but like how to do all of that, I don't know. I don't remember any of that. That's gone.
Do you know the 7 layers of the OSI burrito?
Uh, yeah. I can't name them. I know what they are, and if I read like I know they exist.
Yeah.
And I know layer 8 is most of the problems that exist.
And layer 9,
But
layer 8 being
yeah,
politics, and layer 9 being budget.
yeah, yep. So it's But I mean, again, I read a book in a week, took the test, passed it. Like that.
Yep.
That's if someone asked me to go do networking stuff, I'd be like, got ChatGPT, Google, here I go.
Yeah. And we in interestingly enough, right, to correlate Larry this a bit, we hire a lot of, I don't have my ring on now, but I'm a graduate from the engineering department at the University of Toledo, so I have a stainless steel ring because I actually took the order of an engineer test, or a little faith, basically saying I won't make bridges that collapse, which is fine because I'll never make bridges, so we're okay. But I hire a lot of people from the University of Toledo, and they come out with a whole bunch of theoretical knowledge and no ability to apply it. Right. So they'll come out and they'll 100% know what the OSI model is. Right. But you put them on a network that has multiple VLANs and they think every switch has to have an IP in every VLAN. And that's 100% not the case. And there's a billion reasons you probably don't actually want to do that. But they believe that, oh, no, every one of these switches needs an IP in every one of these subnets. And they don't understand the difference between layer 2 and layer 3, right? Because they've only learned it in theory. And it sounds like you're in the exact same boat there, right? Like you learned enough of it to pass the test, but you didn't actually learn enough of it. You never actually applied any of those skills, so they never really stuck.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I I'm fully on board with you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I've always wanted to build out a program to demonstrate like in the career development plan I was working on, I had tasks that you could demonstrate you're an expert in your role. So you would perform this to be able to demonstrate it, and then that would earn you a monetary raise. And you had I tried to get 3 for each role, just to demonstrate you're an expert in your role, because the building someone's path is important, but not everyone is going to want the path you want for them. And sometimes their path is just stagnant right now, right? There have been times where I didn't want to move, didn't want to be promoted, didn't want to, I was fine where I was at in all aspects. And I wanted to just relax for a little bit. And, I had a lot of things, maybe personal going on, right? You don't know where someone's at in their lives. So, um, I've had this debate a few times with some people where I would be fine with people who did their job, who were considered mediocre, who did their job the
Mm-hmm.
way I expected them to do it, and but they didn't go above and beyond, right? I would be 1,000% fine if my entire staff was that way. And the amount of times people were like, "No, I can't have that at my company." I'm like, "Well, good. I hope you have a huge budget, and I hope that you can run with 7 people, because that's about how many of those exist." And dim, having a system for those people who are okay where they're at right now in their
Mm-hmm.
lives, to be able to demonstrate and work towards something if they want to, even though they may not want to move to the whole next level, but
Yeah.
they may want to demonstrate their effectiveness in their role, is, I think, highly important and something you can't forget.
Well, that brings up a couple of really interesting related topics, right? Like, yes, we have to plan for the people that are content in their roles, right? They still need education, they still need some career development, but it's going to be a different set of career development than the people that are trying to move up in the world. And let's be real, right? Like, there are a lot of those people, and if you push them to go beyond where they are comfortable being, then the Peter principle eventually, I know Matt talked about it in the last session, the
Yep.
Peter principle eventually applies, right? You will promote these people one level higher than they're capable of handling, and you'll eventually just have to fire them. So as we talk about, there's a poll over on the left or right there. If you click on the little thing that looks like a bar graph, asking how many people have career paths and career plans for their employees, right? And sometimes that career plan is, you know what, I'm perfectly content doing help desk. I don't really want to move on. I've got several of those that are they're happy there. And so, being able to identify that and handle those people appropriately is great, right? Additionally, I encourage everybody to create technical and managerial growth plans, right? It's harder to do on the MSP side, but man, some of your most technical resources need a career advancement that does not involve them managing people. Because guess what? Those
Absolutely.
technical people suck at managing people in many cases.
Well, that's not the problem is that they're not trained on how to manage people. Like you take this technical individual who's personable, who's smart, who's good, and you say, "Hey, I want you to run this department now," and then you leave them, right? You say, "Hey, check timesheets. This is how you do it," and that's it. You walk away. But they don't know how to lead people. They don't know how to manage. I mean, how were you ever taught on how to do conflict resolution and how to deal with uh difficult people and how to work through situations on a personal level? Like
I
I
nope.
wasn't.
No,
But
I just yell. Is yelling how you do that? Because that's how I do it
I don't
most of the
know.
time.
Some people respond to that. Some won't. I mean, it's the the amount of frustration I get when people get promoted and are forced into the Peter principle at that point because you're not enabling them. Like one of the at the previous role, we moved some people that were technical into managerial roles, and then we were frustrated that they weren't demonstrated, like that the teams weren't really succeeding in the way we wanted them to or expected them to. And my first question was, well, did we train them on how to manage people? And no one said anything. And I was like, what are we expecting then? Right? We've just given technical. If you're promoted into a managerial role, you know how to do the role you're previously occupied. So you're going to fall into that. Like you're going to fall into be like, you're not resetting this password correctly. You need to do this, this, and
Yep.
this.
Yep.
You're not that's not
Yeah.
managing. That's
Yeah.
micromanaging and forcing people to follow your exact task. That's not going to accomplish
Yeah.
what you need to be accomplishing and focusing on. One of the so I started doing a management class. I started training all of our middle managers, and I started with two books. The first book I started with was 1 Minute Manager. We
Mhm.
did a 30 to 45-minute class on each of the principles of 1 Minute Manager to demonstrate how to do basic managerial, basic leadership, and tasks, and the why you do it and the purpose of it. And then we did Raving Fans was the second book we did. We did several 45-minute classes on that
Yep.
to demonstrate that we're a services based industry, we're a services based company. We want to make sure that we can demonstrate effectiveness, we can demonstrate uniqueness in a world full of similar businesses, right? So if you've promoted people and have let them go, or they're struggling, start there, buy them for them, buy those books, and discuss, read them yourself and discuss the reason why you want to do stuff like that, because it's really frustrating seeing the talent either be pushed out or let go because
Yeah.
you've moved them into a role they can no longer succeed at and you're not enabling their success.
Yeah. It's
Have you used that as your thing?
yeah, it's that is a hard place to live, right? Like, and we're, I mean, honestly, we are literally internally going through a lot of that exact same struggle right now, right? Which we have some newer pod leaders that we've escalated up, and you're 100% right. Like, it never even occurred to me now. We didn't give them managerial training, and they need it, right? So I was actually. If you saw me look over here, I was DMing
Yeah.
Matt the books you just suggested and telling him, "Hey, you need to have your team read these."
I think I have a copy of my syllabus, which is horrible.
Yeah.
As I got lazier from doing it, I'll send it to you. But the premise is simple. It's just like I remember towards the end of April May timeframe, we had someone who we promoted up and we put someone into his position, and he got on the call and was like, "Hey, I'm struggling with how to one of my technicians is upset and mad, not specifically at me, but I'm getting the brunt of it because I was promoted above him and he's been here longer." And I was like, this is why we do this class. Like
Get over
this
it.
is the type of stuff we want to discuss and work through. So I was like, you need to have in your one-on-ones, which everyone should be doing, you need to sit down and be like, hey, I understand you're frustrated at the situation. I would be too in your position. I didn't specifically ask for this role. It was asked of me to be in it, and I accepted it. Now, uh, what I can do is figure out why they decided not to go with you or decided not to look at you, and get an understanding from the leadership team why they decided not to go with this other individual, and work with him to figure out what the problems are and work with
Yeah.
him on rectifying those. And follow, you have to follow through as a manager. Those that are going to trust you, your leadership skills. So, and he's like, he came back 2 weeks later and was like, yeah, this is great. Everything's turned around. We're working much better together. He's much more open and friendly. He's good for feedback, and like that's what this is for. You got to have like he didn't know how to do conflict resolution or how to approach that type of situation. And if we didn't have that, he would have like that employee would have probably left and struggled. And he's still there, as far as I'm aware. I believe so. And both of them are, and they're both succeeding. And that's the type of stuff you have to enable and work towards.
Yeah, I mean that kind of segues a little bit into our next topic here, which is how do we individualize training to each individual person, right? Because there are so many different learning styles. Did you ever do a personality assessment of your employees on the way in? Like we've done DISC for a number of ours. We've done a couple others.
I've done one personally. The leadership team did one. I think it was DISC, but like the employees didn't get it.
Okay.
I I I approach that as when I was having a discussion with someone about training and education and working towards it. I asked them how they learned, what was
Yep.
best for you, and I worked towards finding solutions that would benefit them. Because like, everyone learns differently. Like I learn both by watching and doing at the same time. I learn depending on what it is. I learn by just listening. Right, I can gather
Yep.
information like that, but I generally do best at hands-on going through it versus just sitting and listening for 4 hours a day. Like a school just doesn't work for me very
Yeah.
well because I can't sit and listen all day. I have ADD, and I will do
Yep.
anything else
Yep.
than, than pay attention to whatever you're
Guilty.
teaching me.
And as a matter of fact, I have another problem in traditional classroom environments, which is the classroom environment can only go as fast as the slowest learner, and I am never the slowest learner, right? So I am bored all of the time if you put me in a classroom setting. Like normally, when I've had to take them in the past, I took various VMware classes. I took a Veritas VXFS class. Like halfway through the first day of a 3-day class, I have the entire lab book done because while the teacher's up there lecturing, I'm doing all the labs. And at the end of it, I'm done with it. And I am not a person that does well with classroom training, but I have plenty of people here on staff that are right. Like I am a learning by doing. I learn by I consume a metric butt ton of YouTube content, right? And none of it, I don't ever follow along, but it like stores up in my memory, and then later when I'm applying it, it somehow comes back out. I don't understand it, but that's the type of learner I'm at, and I think that as managers and as people that run MSPs, it's on us to understand that not everyone has the same learning style, right? Not everyone has the learning style that you have, right? So it's on us and it's on you to customize the ways you let those users learn with the ways that they actually will effectively get the retain the information. And sometimes that might be the mail room at ConnectWise University, right? Sometimes that might be a sandbox where they can poke around and play with things and break them and reset them and break them again and reset them again and do that, right? And sometimes it's a mix of the two.
Some people learn by just poking, right? How many times have you run up on a problem that you just kept poking at? You had no clue. You didn't even know what to Google, what to search, and you just kept poking, and eventually you figured out what the issue was just because you kept at it occasionally here and there. I mean, it's that's why I always approach it as how can I help you? How can I enable you to learn better, right?
Yeah.
How can I put something together? If you want me to give you a book to read, sure. If you want me to quiz you on a book, if you want
Yep.
me to give you a task list of things to do and demonstrate, like if you want me to break something for you and have you go poke at it and fix it, let me know. I will do whatever I can to help enable you be better because if you're better, I'm better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
it's
go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
One of the things that we do, right, like that isn't taken advantage of nearly as much as it should be, is I have a $3,000 a year stipend for any employee to use for professional development any way they want to use it, right? So like if you learn best via classroom environment, go find a classroom, go find a class to take. Like if you learn best via books, you can buy a lot of books for $3,000. If you need to build a lab, I have equipment here you can probably use. And if we need additional stuff, we can just take it out of that education bucket, right? And that lets employees decide that the best method to get that information for them and actually act out on and do it. The problem is getting employees to actually do that.
So I'm going to ask you a question, which I am biased towards. What do you think conferences are worth going to from an educational standpoint?
Look at you with your seamless segues. Yes.
I've done this a few times.
I also am biased, but I believe as an industry. Let me back up. I believe there are 100% very much conferences worth going to, but many of them in the MSP space are not them.
Okay, so I run MSP GeekCon. Like that has been,
Yep.
I ran it the past 2 years. I am not in charge this year, but I am involved. It is the
videos are right
the
here,
number one the number one focus that the conference, when we were setting this up, was education only. That is the only, anytime someone gets up on stage, it is specifically to do education. I don't care if you're a vendor, I don't care if you're a consultant, I don't care if you're a janitor. If you have information we feel valuable to the community as a whole, we want you to speak on it. We don't want you to do a sales pitch, obviously. So there are definitely limitations we have, but it's all about education. And we have a dedicated team that goes through and rigorously debates and checks and goes through and figures out, what talk will be work here, what talk works here, and can we have a nice flow. It is a lot of work for a lot of people, but some conferences, and there's like most conferences actually will give, as a part of a sponsorship deal, give you a chance to speak. And some of those are the whole session, some of those are before or after, some of those are keynote stages. It just depends on the conference and whatever they're trying to provide value for their sponsors. And those aren't as valuable because those are mostly sales pitches to show why my product is better. They can absolutely be informational and valuable in that aspect, but from an education standpoint, probably not nearly as much.
Yeah, I think that. So I actually have a lot of thoughts on this, and as Matt Lee just pointed out, him and I and Tom just did a whole 45-minute discussion about this when we were at GurCon a couple weeks back. Very good show, very good conference, and the problem is that what we have in our industry are a couple of flagship conferences, I would call them, right? So like DattoCon, whatever Kaseya calls theirs, IT Nation Connect, and what Enable is Empower, I think is what they call theirs. Those are flagship conferences, right? Those are the same as the Cisco Lives or the VM World or the Oracle Open Worlds, right? Like these are huge multi-billion-dollar vendors throwing a conference to flex because they can. The conferences tend to be somewhat salesy. They're very expensive to attend as sponsors, so you want to make sure you get as much ROI out of it as possible. As such, you want to get in front of people and speak to them, right? So you end up with a lot of sales pitches there and a lot of product-led stuff, right? And product-led is the biggest piece of this. It's not education-led, it's product-led. Then we have a whole series of what I'm going to call tier 2 vendors in our space, right? Like I'm looking at you, ScalePad, right? I'm looking at you, LineGuard. I'm looking at you, CyberFox, right? Like, and these are people I'm friends with. You aren't big enough to do a flagship conference. right? So if you're emulating those giant conferences, you're doing a disservice to your customers. Like, you need to be conferences that are education first, right? Like, teach somebody to do something. And Alex Farling at Lifecycle Insights was amazing at this. He would go give a talk. He would give a talk about how to have an absolutely awesome TDR. And at the end, for 2 minutes, he would say, "This is really hard, and we have a tool that can make it easier." But he taught you all the ways to do it. It did not require using their tool. He didn't even talk about their tool until the very end of it. Kyle Hansloven, John Hammond, both other additional great examples of people that lead with education. And then maybe at the end, you get 30 seconds to a minute of actual product pitch. And that is the way, that is the future, I think, of
I don't even do that.
what?
Kyle
Yeah.
Hanslow doesn't even do that.
No.
He's like, I'm the CEO. It's fine. Let's just move on.
Yes. And I think that the industry, right? Like, we have a chance to fix this. And I think at GeekCon, like, I was obviously on. I signed up too late to volunteer this year. I'm sure at some point somebody may tap me in to do something, or I will certainly be on the ground helping.
It's MSP GeekCon. We got to be clear with the name if you're going to say, because GeekCon might be something else.
True. MSP GeekCon. True.
Like, I also colloquially will say GeekCon because it's just shorter.
I was on content selection for the past 2 years, right? And what I will tell you is that the first year, almost all the talks we had submitted were just vendor pitches, right? And we had to twist and basically beg and like guide people to get good talks. Last year, we had 103 talks submitted and only 24 spots to fill. So last year it completely flipped and we were turning away good talks, right? And I want to continue to see that. I want to see MSPs at these conferences and not just MSP GeekCons of the world, right? Like other conferences. I want to see MSPs teaching other MSPs how to do these things and educating, right? And it's really easy to get, and I'm sure Matt Lee, and I know I heard part of it, talks about imposter disorder. Get over it. You are interesting. You do have things to teach people. I have it too. It sucks. But yeah.
I've done MSP Geek. I believe I'm doing it again next year. The conference's keynote twice. I get to do it again. And it's interesting getting on stage and having a talk. And it's not as difficult as you think it is. Do a shot of bourbon before you get on stage. That can help out a lot.
Or a bottle of bourbon.
Depending on your nervousness, not Malort. That's not going to. That's gross.
No.
I mean,
you'll be
the
making
amount
a
of
face.
Yeah, the amount of like that's one of the things. Like, as a vendor, like, you have a deep knowledge of your area where your software provides, right? If you're a networking vendor, RMM vendor, patching vendor, what have you, you have a deep knowledge of that, right? Someone on your team does. You can go and educate without having to talk about your product. And I've always been of the opinion that if you can demonstrate your expertise in the area, people will trust you more and be more likely to go to your product without having you to do a sales pitch.
Yeah, I mean, Phin successfully fished Kelvin, which says they're really good at fishing people, and we should trust them.
Absolutely. It's just, but it's stuff like that is a great. You're probably getting like 6 DMs right now. Probably all from Kelvin. There's the amount of like importance in education that exists. Even at the bigger conferences where there's sales pitch, there are some education that exists there. You just have to find it. I do hope there's a more resurgence towards education, because when I was going to some of those Keystone conferences initially, early on in my career, there were primarily education focused. There was sales pitches and stuff, but it wasn't nearly as many.
Yeah.
So I hope there's a more of a resurgence of that for sure.
And I mean, I would encourage people to go to conferences that are only peripherally in our space. Like, I'm leaving to Deadwood tonight. Matt's already there, right? Like, we're going to Wild West Hacking Fest. I will learn a ton at Wild West Hacking Fest. Is it all applicable to what I do? No, not even a little bit. However, will I pick up nuggets out of that do directly apply to what I do? Hell yeah, I will. You came to CodeMash, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
You attended some.
I attended a couple. Yeah, it was great. The That's one thing we didn't mention. Like if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to learn about this obscure thing that technically doesn't have anything to do with your business," I'm going to encourage that
Yep.
specifically for that reason. There's going to be nuggets. There's always value in education. It may not be a direct value, it may be an indirect value, but it's going to be there, and that shows that someone's interested in something. And if you can foster that interest, that might blossom into other areas. Especially if because at that point you're reinvesting in your employees,
Yep.
and it's always been a struggle of mine when I've had conversations with CEOs and leadership teams. um, you have to reinvest into your staff and your employees. You have to demonstrate you're willing to do that. It is it provides so many intangible benefits that you don't see, even though all you see is maybe money going out or whatever. Um, Work towards that. Work towards building that, fostering that involvement with yourself and your staff, especially as you
Yeah.
grow as a company.
I mean, to give you some good examples of this, right? Like, so again, I've spoken in Attend Code Mash, and I will sit through a talk on testing, software code testing, right? I mean, while I do have 2 Java devs on staff, we're not a software development organization. However, I gained a lot of insight into helping write policies and stuff around how we test things like network changes that can be taken directly from the way you test code, right? Because guess what? Software developers are really good at creating repeatable
The
frameworks
process is
to
the
test
same.
shit. Like you can directly apply those. You just sub out code for whatever it is you're doing. And you can very much take very testable or very good direct relationships out of things that aren't even necessarily in the same vein, right? So another tip I have for conferences, I will go watch a good speaker talk about something I'm really peripherally interested in over a bad speaker talking about something that I really want to see. I often choose the talks I
Get
attend by the
more from
speakers.
yeah, you'll get more from the speaker. But you have to be careful with that because sometimes you may not know the speaker.
Yep.
They may be new. So I Some of the good conferences you can go to, GERCon, Code Mash is good. B-Sides, DEF CON could be good depending on your involvement. Then there's some inside the industry. MSP GeekCon's education focused. Right of Boom is primarily education focused. Um, there's a couple of them in our industry. Do you have any other conference recommendations, Jason?
No,
That are
I just put a whole group of
oh,
them in the chat there, right? A lot of them that you called out.
Beyond,
Matt, of course, is calling out
Let's
Beyond
say
because I
Beyond.
think he's contractually obligated to do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
there are some general ones. I've heard reasonably good things about Can IT Con, which is more of a general one. In Ohio, we've had the Linux Fest or Penguin Con. There's been those that have happened over the years, right? Like there a lot of the open source communities find themselves ways to get together to hang out, right? Like in the end, let's be real. Part of the impetus of creating MSP GeekCon was we wanted to get together and hang out once a year, right? Like, and
no, I mean that was a side effect, absolutely. But part of the main impetus was to provide education. It's something MSP Geeks always wanted to do. But
yeah,
and uh, to be honest, doing a conference with education was stupid. Like that, doing our first foray and making it be a giant conference was dumb. But we did it, and we were successful. So
yeah.
hopefully that continues.
You also have, right, like a lot of local stuff, right? Like Eventbrite is a great place to check for that. Like we
Yeah.
have here in Toledo, Ohio, I used to run, it's down now, but I'm thinking about spinning it back up. I used to run ToledoTechEvents.org, right? Which was a calendar, an open source calendar that people could put events on. We have vibrant communities here in my town around web development. We have a .NET users group. Meetup.com is another good one, right? Like in Detroit, there's IT in the D, right, which is a relatively small. So there's a bunch of local, small little meetups you can get together and just, hang out with other people doing what you do and ask questions. Be curious, right? Like you will learn so much just by being curious.
Yeah. Join communities too. There's online meetups and online stuff that's happening all the time as well. You'd be surprised at just what side groups you get invited to and stuff is just participating and asking questions, as Jason said.
Yeah, eventually you end up getting roped into last minute webinars if you do it enough.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay. I had one last topic in there about lab environments. I don't think with 6 minutes left, I'm not really sure we have time to probably get to
here's
that.
my, here's my recommendation for labs. Make them set up their own labs.
Yep. Tom Lawrence Systems, like one of the we merged with him last year. He has a lot of good stuff on his channel about how to set up a home lab. They have a whole home lab show. I would encourage, if you're running an MSP, facilitate users creating labs, right? Like we have equipment, we have this nice big office space here in the basement. I've got 2 racks down there, and there are VM environments down there right now. There's a combination of VMware and XCP-ng that people can spin up lab stuff on. We've got plenty of equipment that people can do it. Even if you don't have actual office space, digital ocean droplets or Linode instances are so cheap that just give your employees a budget to go
15 bucks a
spend
month for
on
like
some
a
of those
decent.
resources.
Yeah.
What?
Like they're like 15 bucks a month is not at all
Yeah,
expensive.
12 bucks a month for the lowest end one.
But let's be real. Like as an MSP, how many servers are you replacing? People moving to the cloud, you have
Enough.
boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Keep them, have some for yourself so you can have an internal lab environment, and then give them to your client. Like take the hard drives, right? Do all the security necessary you need to do, but give them to your employees and be like, hey, you want a server to build a lab on? Do you want to play with this? I mean, as
We
someone
have a
who,
whole process around debanning. Drives come in, we deban them, we print a certificate of destruction for them, and then the techs can reinstall onto them.
yeah, I mean, as someone who did not have the means to purchase a server or a lab environment, if if they'd have come to me and be like, hey, are you interested in building a lab? Even if it's a temporary setup, like if it's just like, here, you can send this out for 6 months, set that up, build that out. You're getting this equipment that's getting replaced. It doesn't need to be trashed.
Yeah. Don't underestimate the electricity costs of a 5-year-old server, though.
Yeah, God no.
It's
Very
probably 30,
expensive,
40 bucks a month.
if not more, depending on
Yeah.
the server. So
Yeah. Cool.
that's my recommendation.
So I think we had a question. No crypto miners. Although that giant GPU box can run crypto miners. Josh, you said we had a question. I don't see any in the.
It's where do non-certification propped up? There's a Q&A button on the right side.
Yeah, I don't see it.
It's right below the chat button.
Well, I see the Q&A button. I just don't have no questions. Mine says no questions have been submitted.
Oh, I've got open one. Where do non-certification I'm assuming it's professional communication skills, business skills for management presentation.
Oh, soft skills. How do you learn soft skills?
Oh, practice.
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't. I would love to see in the chat. Does anyone have a good recommendation? I think that Empath is trying to build some stuff down that road.
It is like, as someone who's done this a few times, training Scott, you can go and be like, hey, you have to be nice, you have to be courteous, say please, thank you. You have to build empathy, but at the end of the day, it comes down to practice, right? Those soft skills, it's practice, right? Pretend to be an angry customer. Make someone run intake, like answer phone calls if they're not strong in soft skills.
I have an interesting thing that I ask my employees to do, and I have to do this with Matt, my Matt, more often than anyone else, I think. If you were on the other end of that phone call, would you be DMing me in Slack bitching right now? If the roles were reversed and you were on the receiving end of that phone call instead of the end of it you're on, would you be complaining at me in Slack? And if the answer to that is yes, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Practice with coaching. Sheila's right. Like you have to practice and review. Like if someone's like, let's say they get an angry client and they have to they're working on that. They're practicing, so to speak. Sit on them with a call. Like review their call. Review if you have the ability to record your calls, record a few of them, and be like, all right, this is what you probably would have been better if you just said it like this or with a different tone. Um,
Yeah.
tone is very important as well. And if you have an accent, you automatically get a positive relation with whoever's angry on the other side. It is completely unfair. So get an accent.
Yeah.
That's a cheat way to win.
Net calls out that the questions about adding soft skills into the professional development plan 100%, right? Like
Yeah.
you need some method to address that. And we had it yesterday. I've got a relatively new guy, super sharp, super smart guy. Reached out to, everyone has grumpy customers, reached out to a grumpy customer asking him when a good time to reboot a server was, got a really shitty response about, I pay you to do this. Why do I have to tell you when? And it's like, that's a little bit of a lesson in soft skills. So like we were talking about it as a team as to how to handle that in the future. One, like, why do you guys not have it documented when their business hours are closed? So why are you asking the guy when to reboot stuff? That was the first thing. And second thing is, like, this is a good example of, like, de-escalation procedures and other things that things that you talked about earlier that you have to pick up and learn. Pro tip, telling the customer to stop being an ass to your employees isn't a good long-term customer retention move. Ask me how I know that one.
Well, it depends. I would put an asterisk on that. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
I would agree with you, but there are some situations to where they just need to be checked.
Yeah. Well,
But only the people with the title can check them. The
yeah.
CEO owner title can check them.
Yeah, 100%. And I get to play that card every once in a while. But anyways, I think
It's
we're at
fun.
time.
We are.
So you go home and enjoy your internet-free existence for a little bit where life is easier. Maybe you can build a
I
barn.
still got work to do. I'm working.
Okay.
I've been working all day. Like I'm just sitting in my truck working.
Cool. Okay. Well, Josh, I think back to you.